I don't know if you've ever stopped to actually think about it, but there actually is something that is, you could say, even holy, maybe even divine about the family unit. You look across the entire Bible and you can actually see God describing his relationship to his creation, his relationship to Christ, and his relationship to us, his church, in terms of these family type bonds. I mean, you see imagery of Christ being referred to as a bridegroom that is awaiting his bride. You can see us being referred to as God's children. So that being said, it has to make you wonder, what is it about the family that we should be replicating when it comes to the church? I mean, you think about the church and clearly we've made it into a very corporate thing, but that's not really how it is when you look across the church of the New Testament, the church that existed in the book of Acts. Everything was far more oriented around these family units or extended family units. People had those feelings that they were there for one another, not just there because there was a common brand or there was a common title on the outside of a building. And so because of that, we've kind of transformed church into something that is a little bit more corporate, something that's a little bit drier. And I think that can actually impact our ability to actually be a part of this church. It's very different when you're doing something for a family member or doing something for your household versus when you're doing something for work or for something where maybe you're concerned about the appearances or you feel like there's some obligation that you have to meet up to some job title. So the big question for us is, what would a church look like if it actually embraced the concept of not being a church out of a common brand or a common set of corporate structures, but instead was a church because it was a family of believers united in Christ that loved one another? I kind of alluded to it there just before the break, but I think when you're serving as a part of a family, it really does look very, very, very different than serving as a part of a entity, an institution like many churches are. It really does ramp up the stress and it makes it so that it's something that oftentimes you really don't have a passion for. I can't tell you how many times I had some position in a church that I was supposed to, have some kind of calling or some sense of duty, but in fact, it just felt like drudgery because it felt like I was trying to meet somebody's job description or position assignment rather than actually doing something I felt God was calling me to do. But you see, when you're a family, it becomes very different because suddenly I'm not really doing something because I'm trying to keep some corporate entity going. I'm doing something because I'm doing it for my friend. I'm doing it for my brother or my sister. I'm doing it for my children. I'm doing it for my parents. And so it's something that I want to do even if the chore itself isn't something I want to do, but it's because I want to show that I love and I care for those other people in my household. Now, some people still have a hard time with getting involved in their church and with getting involved with any kind of religious body because they either feel a little bit shy or maybe they feel like they're ill-equipped. And there's two very good scriptural examples that can kind of counteract this, at least to a degree. When it comes to feeling ill-equipped, the entire story of Gideon can serve as an example of how that is actually a good thing that you feel that way. You see, Gideon had an army of the Hebrew people that was going to stand up against some of the people occupying the promised land. And even though his army was dramatically outnumbered by the enemy, God still told Gideon, you have too many people. And you can read this at the beginning of Judges. Well, Gideon sent some people home, but then God still said, you still have too many people, so I want you to send even more home. And he ended up going against what some estimates say were just shy of 500,000 people with only 300 individuals of his own Hebrew people. You look at that and you say, well, why would God do something like that? Was he just sadistic? Well, no, it's because God even says in the Bible, I want to make certain that there is no way that my people can say they did this by their hand. And I share that because I feel like some people will say I'm ill-equipped to do anything. I don't feel like I can lead. I don't feel like I can sing. I don't feel like I have the confidence to do something. I don't have the organizational skills. I don't even know if I have the time. And the reality is that where you feel that you're insufficient to do something, that's where God shines the brightest. I can tell you right now that when we were planning this church, and originally the structure even of how pastoring was going to work and everything was completely different, I was already a little nervous that I would have the energy or the time or anything to be able to do what was needed in order to serve this church. And then when we had the brilliant idea to have another kid, that didn't get any better. But God provides a way. He provides the energy, He provides the time, He provides the skills where we feel we are insufficient. And I feel like He does that because He wants us to understand that our faith is not about what we are qualified to do. It's about what God can do through us and that blessing He can show us. Now, that second thing I mentioned was, being shy or feeling like, you're going to make an idiot of yourself. And I get it. I sit in front of a camera every single week, and I can tell you, yes, it is very awkward. But I want to share you this one quick little thing before you go into your small groups and discuss some of this a little bit more in depth. And that is a story about David. You see, when David had the Ark of the Covenant, he was celebrating the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, and so he was actually dancing. He got to a point where he was dancing and even stripping some of his clothes off and things like that. And he wasn't doing anything that was horrid. He wasn't doing anything sinful. He was just getting very carried away with the sense of joy that he had. And his wife, Michal, came out and said, well, you sure are making an embarrassment out of yourself. And I want you to see how David responds here. So this is coming from 2 Samuel chapter 6. In verse 21, it says, David replied to Michal, it was before the Lord who chose me over your father, King Saul, who tried to oppress him, and his whole family to appoint me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will dance before the Lord, and I will dishonor myself and humble myself even more. Now, when you see that, there's a couple of things you have to think. First of all, for David to point out to his wife, who, by the way, was the daughter of King Saul, the previous king who had been trying to hunt him down for so long, he points out that God favored me over your father. So first things first, based. Second thing is that you can see that David is basically saying that I'm willing to be undignified for the joy I have in the Lord. And I share that because there is this sense sometimes that we have to have dignity or we have to have the right optics when we're serving God. But the reality is that it was never about us looking good. It's never about the optics that we as individuals or us as a church can really have. Instead, it's about the optics of what God does in the life of somebody that can change their heart. And the only way that we get there is by being willing to put ourselves in a position where maybe we even feel a little bit vulnerable, because it's through that vulnerability that God's strength can shine the brightest. Now, I have no doubt that there's not a wide range of people feeling and thinking different things when they hear somebody talking about getting active and participating in some kind of church family. But what I'm trying to get to here is not so much trying to staff the ranks of an organization or anything like that, but I'm trying to emphasize the fact that here at the Well Community Church, one of the things that we were trying to do is something of a grand experiment, you can think of it. It was basically saying, can we have a church that isn't based on the same traditions and the same mechanisms that so many other churches are based on? Instead, can we try to drive things by what we feel the Spirit is calling us to do, by where we feel the need is? Can we sit here and do things in a way and become the thing that we need to be so that we can reach people for Christ and help them to experience the joy that we experience? And in doing that, some things look a little bit different. We don't all meet together. We have some people meet here at a home church. We have some people meet at the hub. Pretty soon we're going to have multiple home churches. We're in conversations with another pastor who approached me who even wants to do something for our Hispanic community. Throughout that, what you can see is a church that's not concerned about their own brand, because that's a horrible way to structure your church if you're worried about branding, but instead trying to meet people in a way that it will resonate with them, that they can have an experience with Christ. A part of that is encouraging this sense of family among all of us, that we have these individual worship families that are all a part of this bigger family of the Well. So what I would like to ask for each one of you is to consider what your role in this family is. To not just be an individual that sits on the sideline and just kind of exists inside the household, but instead has some kind of role, has some kind of place. And if that place is somewhere where right now you just need to focus on growing, then hey, so be it. But I want everybody to at least consider how maybe they can help, not the big collective and not help out the institution or anything, but how can you help out your brothers and sisters in Christ? There are many, many different ways that you can do things in a church. It doesn't have to be leading something. It could be just contributing to something. But I'll say this, the motto that I constantly repeat over and over again is that we want to say yes first and give ourselves permission to fail. And I mean that. If there's something that you want to see that will help you, then as my brother and sister, I want to say yes, and then let's try to do whatever that is. If there's something you think you're capable of doing for a brother and sister, then let's say yes, and let's have everybody find a way to help you make that happen. Whatever it is, whatever you feel may be on your heart, whatever you feel might just be a passing thought, bring it up, say something. Because this is a family, and as my family members, I want to know what you think. I want to know how you feel, and I want to know how we can better reach you, and I want to know how you feel we can better reach other people. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I really want to hear back from you guys, so hope you have some good thoughts. I'll be praying for all of you, and just know this, every single thing that I or anybody else at the Well Community Church are doing for you, we're not doing for a brand, and we're not doing it for some generational tradition or anything like that. We're doing it because we love God and because we love you. That's our lesson that we have for you today. I hope you're able to get something out of it. Until we can meet again, God bless.